Awesome. We'll go ahead and start in a few seconds here. Hopefully everybody's enjoying their first full day of Cisco Live, though. Hopefully you all didn't have to travel too far and all your travels were smooth. Just to quickly introduce myself, my name is Kyle Winters. I am based in Southern California in the United States. I am a technical advocate on the learning and certifications team, and I take a focus on security. I've worn many different hats over the years, whether it's solutions architecture, customer success, application security, all sorts of different roles. But today I want to talk to you all about hardening IT security environments, hardening IT environments, and taking a proactive approach to security. So just a little housekeeping. We do have a WebEx app. You can join the room and ask questions there. That WebEx room will be monitored until February 28th, so feel free to post questions. I'll post some slides and resources in there at the end of the week as well. So our agenda for today, we're going to start by covering the cybersecurity landscape and then give you an introduction on the Center for Internet Security, or CIS. We'll then dive into CIS controls as well as CIS benchmarks, explain what those are, and how that can be a valuable resource for you as you work on hardening your IT systems. We'll end with some resources as well for you to help you along the way and set you up for success. So, to begin, let's talk about the cybersecurity landscape, and we'll start with a quote from Gartner. More than 85% of organizations will embrace a cloud-first principle by 2025, that's this year, and will not be able to fully execute on their digital strategies without the use of cloud-native architectures and technologies. So there's a big paradigm shift that's occurring as things move into the cloud space. There's also a new application paradigm that's unfolding as well. Companies want to be more agile. They want to do things at a quicker speed and velocity. They want to have more specificity and more visibility into what their systems are doing and how they're operating. They want to be able to scale these very quickly and effectively. And they also are building systems that are increasingly more complex as time goes on. There's a new application architecture that's unfolded over the last decade as well. It's no longer a single pane of glass, a single server that's housing all your components. Nowadays, with things like containers and microservices, things are a lot more distributed. You might have your front end sitting in one container, a database in another, your billing services, all these different components sitting across different containers, having different IPs, communicating with each other through various ports and protocols. And that really makes the systems of today a bit more complex. To add to that as well, there's a rapidly accelerating application development process. It's no longer the days of waterfall where you would have these, up to 6-month development cycles, and things are shifting now to 2-week sprints, and with the introduction of artificial intelligence into the SDLC, it's moving even faster. All these components are becoming automated, and the need for security is prevalent in every single step of this as well too. Security is ultimately shifting left, and you need to be able to account for that and check for these different security risks and vulnerabilities at each step of the way. Really, with DevOps, it's really accelerating the process quite a bit, and there's a lot more things that you need to take into account as this process becomes more automated and more developer-focused and shifts further left. So the paradigm and the application architecture and all these different parts of the SDLC are shifting, but on top of that, threats are becoming more complex as well. They're leveraging all sorts of different tactics and techniques. This is a graphic here from the MITRE ATT&CK framework, and you can see that a typical attack is now leveraging many different phases of different tactics and techniques across that MITRE ATT&CK framework. It's becoming a lot more complex than it used to be back in the day. On top of that, it's also becoming more frequent too. This is just from a few years ago. You can see just a ton of high CVSS score type vulnerabilities that are occurring at any given point in time in the year. And if we take a look at it in aggregate here, you can see compared to 10 years ago, there's 5 times more CVEs being published each year. So the amount of vulnerabilities that are being discovered on a weekly basis is increasing significantly as well. These threats are also becoming more expensive too. And just the time that it takes with these different attack vectors and the increase in their sophistication, on average it takes 21 minutes from the time that credentials are discovered to when an attack is initiated. And the average cost of a breach in 2023 was $4.4 million. Now, you can reduce that cost a little bit if breaches are discovered within 200 days of that when they were essentially triggered. But the more complex your system becomes, the more costly those breaches are as well too, adding up to $1.44 million on average when those systems are more complex. So it's becoming more expensive, and the sad reality is that these cyber threats are really built upon avoidable mistakes. And just to give you a few examples here, 80% of cybersecurity breaches involve privileged credentials that somebody was able to access somewhere. 78% of those attacks are leveraging known CVEs as the initial attack vector. And on average, it takes 3 steps in an attack path to reach the crown jewel assets. Now, if we dive into that further, 70% of organizations have a Kubernetes API server that is publicly accessible. That's a lot. And 72% have at least one S3 bucket that has public read access attached to it. And 36% of organizations are keeping unencrypted secrets and PII in these cloud services. Now, probably the most shocking number of all is this last one here, how serious these misconfigurations are. And 99% of cloud breaches will have a root cause that is tied to a preventable misconfiguration. So this is a significant problem that the industry is seeing. Now, there are solutions for it, and one nonprofit organization that I want to talk about today is really here to help you with that, and that is the Center for Internet Security, also known as CIS. Their mission is very straightforward. It's to make the connected world a safer place by developing, validating, and promoting timely best practice solutions that help people, businesses, and governments protect themselves against pervasive cyber threats. And really, their vision is all about leading the global community to secure our ever-changing connected world. Now, I'm sure that's some marketing jargon on their part. What does that really mean? It's really a community-driven nonprofit that is responsible for what we're going to talk about today, the CIS controls and the CIS benchmarks. These are developed in a consensus-based process. It helps facilitate collaboration. It's really about setting you up and giving you the tools that you need to be successful and harden your IT systems effectively. So the first part of it that I want to talk to you about today is the CIS controls. And let's use a garden as an analogy. Now, we'll talk about the garden a little bit here in terms of CIS controls as well as benchmarks. Now, if you're growing plants, let's say in your garden, you know that you need a couple things. You need water, you need sunlight, you need fertile soil. Those are kind of large, general, descriptive things, and that's really kind of an analogy for the CIS controls. When we get into the CIS benchmarks, that's going to be the more prescriptive thing. Each plant obviously needs different amounts of sunlight, different amounts of water, different nutrients, and that's the benchmarks in a sense. But to start with the CIS controls, these are really prescriptive, prioritized, and a simplified set of best practices that you can use to strengthen your cybersecurity posture. It consists of 18 overarching measures, and they're very straightforward. They're very tactical, a lot of these. It'll be a single line in a sense that says, do this or do that. And we'll give you some examples here, but thousands of cybersecurity practitioners from around the world are leveraging these today. And just to give you an example of one, Harley Parks here, who's a director at ACD, said, the CIS controls take the background and knowledge of cybersecurity experts literally around the world and help focus efforts on things that are of most value, directly impacting the adversaries and challenges we face today on our networks. So, with CIS controls, really what you can do is simplify your approach to threat protection. You can comply with a lot of industry standards and regulations across the board, improve your overall cyber hygiene, take these actions, or take these steps and transform them into actions, and in some cases abide by different laws that exist as well too. And to give you an idea of some of those regulations, maybe some of these resonate with you and your businesses. It covers things like GDPR as an example, PCI compliance, SOC 2, some that are specific to governments that you may be familiar with here as well. So If you are in a space where you're focused on any of these different types of regulations, this is going to be a very valuable tip for you and a very valuable tool for you to leverage as well. So really, these CIS controls, they're important because they take a risk-based approach and help you essentially mitigate these things one at a time. It's highly scalable as well, and it's all about measured outcomes. And they give you a lot of good information to help you along the way. And we'll dive into that in a second, but just to give you an idea of the structure of each CIS control, there'll be an overview, why that control is important. So we'll go into a description as to why the industry has decided that you need this type of control. It'll talk about procedures and tools that you can leverage along the way to help you accomplish that control, and give you descriptions on the different safeguards that are part of it as well. So I mentioned there's 18 different controls, and in each side of those, there's different safeguards that apply as well too. There's also another concept related to CIS controls, and that is implementation groups. And this is a valuable way for you, based off of your organization, to figure out what the scope is that you want to focus on for your CIS controls. So IG1 is Implementation Group 1. That is, if you're a small organization or you're just getting started, you have a small cybersecurity practice, these are essential for basic cybersecurity hygiene and a great place to start. It covers 56 safeguards on its own. And as you kind of go down to IG3, the scale and scope of it becomes greater as well. So if you're a large enterprise and you have a lot of different systems, a lot of different customers, maybe you're a government as well too, IG3 is a great place to focus because that is inclusive of IG1 and IG2 as well. So IG2, as an example, has 74 safeguards unique to it, and IG3 has 23. But if you're doing IG3, you're also doing IG1 and IG2 as well. So that's 153 total safeguards for your organization to implement. Now, the 18 different controls, you can see them up here. And as I mentioned, they're kind of big, grand ideas, so to say. So it could be something like inventory and control of enterprise assets. It could be something like access control management. But inside of each one of these, there's individual safeguards for you to try to accomplish as well. And let's just pull one here. Let's do number 6, access control management. It might be a little hard to see on the screen there, but I'll go ahead and zoom it in a little bit. Let's pick that one right there. You can see one of these safeguards here in particular, safeguard 6.3, require multi-factor authentication for externally exposed applications. So you can see this one is related to IG1, 2, and 3. The security function there is to protect, and it's to protect the asset type, which is users. And it'll give you a description as well of that safeguard and why it's important there. So obviously, I think for most cases, whether you're a small organization which has a scope of IG1 or a large enterprise, you want to ultimately accomplish this type of task. And it doesn't necessarily say how to do it. Like I said, it's kind of that more high-level idea of making sure that you accomplish this. So it's kind of up to you and how you want to run your organization, how you accomplish that. The ultimate goal, however, is, in this case, make sure that you have MFA enabled on those applications. And to give you an idea as well of the difference between the scope of IG1, 2, and 3, I've got 3 great examples here under the data protection control. If you're just focused on IG1, the level of scope might be as simple as encrypt data on end user devices, something that hopefully everybody here is already doing. Now IG2, for that more middle-sized enterprise or company, it would be encrypt sensitive data in transit. Now, if you're going all the way to IG3, you're a large organization, their recommendation for this safeguard is deploy a data loss prevention solution. So you can see the scope gets more and more complex and more involved the higher implementation group level that you go. So this is just to give you an idea. Like I mentioned before, if you are a kind of organization that wants to focus on implementation group 3, you do include all the things leading up to it. You can see that even that first one there says IG1, 2, and 3. So these can be very valuable steps. And just to give you an idea of some of the value that comes with it, even if you're just focused on IG1, it'll help you protect against 77% of malware that's out there today, 78% of ransomware, 86% of web application hacks, et cetera. But if you were to do all of them, all the way through to IG3, that increases even more significantly. If you're doing all the CIS safeguards, that's going to protect you from 94% of malware that's out there, 92% of ransomware attacks, 95% of targeted intrusion attempts as well. So as you can see, this can be a very valuable tool in hardening your systems and preventing your organization from malicious attacks. So if you're interested in completing these CIS controls, there are different tools that are available to you online. The first step I always recommend, though, is assessment and planning. You obviously want to make sure that you have the right resources, that you're focused on the right controls. And I highly recommend an incremental approach to this as well. You don't need to shake the ocean and boil it over and do every single thing at once. Focus on one control and one safeguard at a time and make sure that you get it right. And then once you feel confident in that, move on to the next one and have it be an incremental, iterative process. Now, there is a lot of documentation on these safeguards and these controls available online. You can go to the CIS website as well. There are different automated tools as well, such as CIS Cat Pro. And a big part of it as well, too, there's a lot of training and opportunities for you to learn about these controls and apply them today. So that's CIS controls in a nutshell. And as you can see, like I mentioned before, going back to that garden analogy, it's really kind of that more high level of, a plant in a garden, it needs water, it needs sunlight. These are the things it needs to be healthy. But like I mentioned, every plant is different and it has different needs. And that's where the CIS benchmarks come in. So we obviously have a lot of different systems out there today, whether they're different types of Linux servers, different types of Cisco devices, different types of cloud providers. And the reality is that a lot of these obviously come with default configurations, and those are largely built for convenience, ease of use, ease of deployment, but really they don't take security into account the way that they're released and put out on that initial default configuration as well. And if you don't change these default configurations and have security in mind, you could leave your system vulnerable to a lot of different cyber threat actors. So that's where CIS benchmarks come in. It's again, that community-developed security configuration recommendations for these different systems. It's those best practices that are very prescriptive and very direct. Each of these is mapped to those CIS controls. So by completing these CIS benchmarks, you're also completing the CIS controls as well for those different systems. They are covered for over 100 different vendors and technologies out there, whether, like I said, cloud providers, databases, desktop computers, different types of software, mobile devices. I'll show you a list of those here shortly, but these are very valuable. And to give you a quote here as well from Adam, he's a banking information security engineer. He said, "Without this resource, the hardening of our devices would have taken a lot longer and required many meetings between IT and security to debate which configuration settings to change and the impact that they could have. The CIS benchmarks provided the necessary information to alleviate many of the fears IT may have had with changing specific settings." So very compelling, very valuable resource. And as I mentioned before, these are built in a consensus-focused development process. So they have a community of thousands and thousands of engineers that are part of CIS. Some of you might be part of it today as well, too. And this community meets regularly. They engage other people outside of the community as well, and they come up with a consensus on what are the best practices for these different systems to make sure that they're secure. It's not just some person or bureaucrat or some guy up in a hill somewhere saying this is what you need to do. This is the community coming together and saying this is what we as a group have come to a consensus on and said is necessary to secure these systems. So we're going to dive into an example of a CIS benchmark here shortly, but to give you an idea of what's included in it, it'll have a description and a rationale as well that says why this is recommended. So you are kind of going into it with that understanding initially. It'll talk about the impact as well and what the benefit is of leveraging this benchmark. And then it'll give you actual steps on how to audit to see if this is in place already today, as well as what steps you need to remediate that so that way you can implement that and have it in place on your system. So these CIS benchmarks, they're available on the CIS website as a PDF, or if you're a CIS Secure Suite member, you can access it through their tools inside of there. But conveniently enough as well, there are CIS hardened images that have everything already ready to go for you too. So you can have an image of, let's say, Ubuntu as an example, that has already been hardened for you and takes all of this work out so that way you are ready to go. To give you an idea as well of some of the different vendors that have CIS benchmarks in place, you can see they cover cloud providers like AWS and GCP as an example, desktop softwares including some of the different web browsers that are out there, mobile devices. Network devices, you might see a familiar name, second one down under network devices there, and different types of operating systems and server technologies as well too. So one I want to go into today that's obviously very common and very popular is Ubuntu. I think a lot of us here have used Ubuntu, and this is an example of some of the different benchmarks that exist for Ubuntu today. So you can see it covers things from the initial setup, services, network, host-based firewall, access control, and logging and auditing. And inside of each one of these, there's different areas of focus as well. I want to dive in a little bit more into category 5 there, access control. And let's take a look at what it recommends for configuring SSH server. So you can see inside of this one, there's 22 different steps that it recommends to ensure that that server is hardened when it comes to SSH. It can be anywhere from ensuring that the appropriate ciphers are configured, making sure that you're ignoring remote hosts when necessary, all sorts of different things. And to take a look closer at one of these, we're going to take a look at 5.1.20, ensure SSHD permit root login is disabled. Obviously, you don't want somebody to SSH in as a root user. That would not be advised. So taking a look at this actual benchmark from CIS, you can see it gives you a description of what it is. You know, the permit root login parameter should not be enabled. It should be set to default or prohibit password. And it gives you the rationale as to why that should be the case as well too. Now, if we continue on and looking at this, it'll actually give you the necessary commands to audit and see if you have this enabled or not today. So you can go into your Ubuntu server, run that command, and if you get that, then that means you already have permit root login set to disabled. But if you see something else, you know now that you have some work to do, and it'll give you the necessary steps on top of that as well to remediate that. So in this case, it wants you to edit that particular file there, sshd_config, and change that permit root login setting to no. So these are obviously very prescriptive steps now, and giving you the exact step-by-step that you need to implement this particular benchmark and harden that system. And like I mentioned earlier, they're all tied to specific CIS controls as well. So you can see in this particular case, this one is tied to CIS control safeguard 5.4. And it'll also show you as well the MITRE attack mapping, where if somebody was to take advantage of this vulnerability, those are the different types of tactics that they would be leveraging to do that. So hopefully this was very useful for you. And I mentioned earlier that Cisco does have CIS benchmarks for some of its technology as well. You can see a list of that up there, whether it's firepower, firewall, iOS, ASA. Those benchmarks exist, and you can find those on the CIS website as well, and make sure that your Cisco technology is hardened and as secure as possible. So if you're interested in adopting these CIS benchmarks, start by taking an assessment and selecting which of these benchmarks are going to be relevant to your organization. There might be situations where a particular benchmark doesn't apply to your organization, and that's okay. These are best practices, but every organization is different, so do what makes sense for your organization. They are highly customizable. And once you've figured out which ones are of relevance to you guys, the process of implementing it is pretty straightforward, just following those instructions that are included with it. And there are various tools that exist out there. I mentioned CIS Cat Pro. That's a great tool to automate some of the assessment and implementation of CIS controls and benchmarks. There's all sorts of other tools as well that are available in a lot of documentation. Conveniently enough, Cisco also has a tool that's focused on this called Cisco Panoptica, which focuses on comprehensive code to cloud security. It covers a lot of different things, but a part of that as well is compliance monitoring, which also covers CIS benchmarks. So if you're not familiar with Panoptica and you haven't seen a demo of it, they should be over there, I believe, in the security zone, if I'm not mistaken. But just to give you a little taste of what comes with that CIS compliance tracking in Panoptica, you can see that we cover up there, you can see AWS CIS version 1.3 is selected. So this is the necessary benchmarks auditing for AWS infrastructure, and it'll give you essentially the different breakdown of where you're compliant and following along with those benchmarks and where you're missing the mark, as well as prescriptive steps further on to do that and remediate that. So it's a very valuable tool. I highly recommend that you check it out. It can help you streamline a lot of this and continuously audit and monitor as systems are coming up throughout your organization. So hopefully this was a valuable session for you all. I really appreciate you joining me here today. In summary, we did cover a lot of these controls and benchmarks. Hopefully these are valuable to you. Just remember that there's 18 controls and a lot more benchmarks for over 100 different technologies, and those controls are mapped to the benchmarks as well. So when you're doing the benchmarks, you're also solving for the controls. If you're interested in learning more, I highly recommend that you check out the CIS website. I will post that in the WebEx room later this week for you to check out. And feel free to begin implementing those CIS controls and benchmarks as well. I also recommend that you check out Cisco U. If you're not familiar with Cisco U, it's the name of the theater here. It's our premier learning platform that we have at Cisco. There's a ton of free tutorials that are available there. So I highly recommend that you check that out, as well as check out Panoptica and get a free demo of that as well too. So thank you all. I really appreciate it. As you're going through the week, feel free to fill out your session surveys. You fill out 4 of them, you get this awesome special limited edition Amsterdam only Cisco t-shirt here. So highly recommend your feedback. It's always appreciated. And as you enjoy the rest of your week here, feel free to check out the Cisco showcase for related demos, book a one-on-one with the Meet the Engineer. We have capture the flag exercises going on in the DevNet zone here as well too. So a lot of fun stuff, and I hope that you all take advantage of it, make the most of your week here in Amsterdam, and have a great time. And thank you all so much for attending today.